Hello, trampoline friends. Welcome to Trampoline Insight. This is episode 19. I'm Nuno alongside Stephen Gluckstein, and today we have two trampoline friends with us. One of the very few couples we have.
Today, we're joined by two phenomenal athletes that competed in different disciplines for different countries. They have competed at the highest level of their sport, one at the Olympic Games for trampoline and the other at the World Games for tumbling. Please help us welcome the amazing couple of British trampolinists, Kirsten Lawton Fournials and French tumbler, Nico Fournials.
Kirsten and Nico, thank you for coming on the podcast. We are really excited for this conversation today. How have you guys been doing?
Great, really good. Thank you. Thanks for having us. How are you?
We've been doing great.
Good.
Even with the current situation, I think we've been doing okay.
Yeah, the gyms are slowly starting to open up and the athletes are getting their chance to get back on the equipment, which is, I'm not sure, something that I don't really think in my lifetime. I had maybe one long break, but most of these athletes, they've never experienced a break this long. So they're all eager and dying to get back on the equipment.
I bet, yeah. It's usually for injury or something, so this is really
strange,
unprecedented. Yeah, absolutely.
It's quite funny that I have a few athletes that came back better than what they were before. You know, motivation wise, mental wise, tough, but physically they're like stronger than they were before. They grow and everything. I'm quite excited. Let's see.
I guess they've been doing a lot of home workouts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
We know
they've been
Steven kept them busy.
Yes, absolutely. I think they're much stronger than they have ever been in their entire lives. All right, so let's kick this off. There's tons of athletes that don't know trampoline history past any athletes that's been retired, right? And I think it's kind of changing, right? So when I was an athlete, I'm sure when you were an athlete, we used to look back to athletes, the history. I feel like I watch videos all day long, and I feel like that's kind of changing. So I'm really excited for these athletes that are listening to get you to know you guys a little bit better. So we introduced you guys a little bit briefly. So you guys are currently married, right? Where are you guys living? Are you guys in France? Are you guys in England? Are you guys in Zimbabwe? What's going on?
In France, of course.
The best country in the world.
My English was not good enough to live in England,
so I had to learn French, and now we live in Rennes, which is in the northwest of France, in Brittany, and that's where Nico did his whole sort of tumbling career. That's where he trained, and that's why I came here to start with, because he was still training. So, and we've stayed. Stayed here.
So
how long do you enjoy?
Sorry.
So, Kirsten, do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy Rennes?
Oh yeah, I love it. I really love living in France. I needed a big change actually when I stopped the sport, and it was the perfect time, seeing as I was dating Nico. It was the perfect time to move to France, and I don't necessarily want to move back, although I do miss a lot about Britain too. But France, we've got a really good life here. So.
But and it's not very far. You guys, if you want, you could drive home if you wanted, right? By American standards, you could drive home because it's
like
doable.
Not even another state. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Nico comes from the south, so his family live in the south of France, and it's probably just as far for us to go and visit them than it is to go back to Britain to visit my family. So it's doable. Not at the moment, but in normal. Yeah.
It's not something you do every weekend, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah, several times.
It's not like me that I'll get on a boat and go to Portugal.
I think you would get on a plane before a boat.
I know.
I think that might take a little longer.
All right,
so let's continue. Let's dive in here. So how did you guys start in the sport, and at what age?
I'll let you start.
I did gymnastics since I was 4, and I started tumbling at 16. when I was living in south of France, a club opened of tumbling, because in France was different at start, different federation, like gymnastic and trampoline tumbling was different. There was no club in my town at start. And when I was 16, a club opened, so I decided to start. And a year after, I was in Rennes in the center. So in national center, and I stay here in Rennes since.
So 16 is quite.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah.
I know, 16 for starting tumbling at 16. It's not what we see nowadays. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Kirsten?
Well, I actually don't remember a time when I didn't do trampolining. I think I did my first competition when I was about 3 years old. I still have the certificate, so I know I was 3 years old when I did my first competition. I was, very young, and I went straight into trampolining because my mum was a trampoline coach, so I was on a trampoline probably before I could walk, really. And
just like my kid, I guess.
And
really?
did your mother was a coach? Was she an athlete as well?
No, my mum did high diving actually, and obviously at the time it was a bit more difficult to find swimming pools with the right diving boards, and so when she moved to university there wasn't a swimming pool and the diving board, so she started up a trampolining club. She did a little bit of trampolining herself, but more as a coach, and then that evolved, and she was one of the GB coaches for quite a long time. And she still runs the club with my sister actually in England. So
wow. And did you have any experience in diving yourself or high diving?
Not really, no. I prefer going feet first than head first, but I didn't really do much diving. Stuck to trampolining, really.
I'm with you on that one. So then I guess, when did you guys meet then? Was it when you guys were already competing internationally, I assume?
Yeah,
the first time we met, it was in 1988.
Not 1988, 1998. Yeah, 1998.
First, when I start like European Championships.
Yeah, European Youth Championships, 1998. So a long time ago.
Yeah, that was the first time we met, and after that it was 2004 when we started.
We started dating in 2004, really, yeah. But we became friends, and we'd seen each other from sort of 1998 onwards, and then after the Olympics in Athens, I decided to go for a holiday in France with Henrik Stellick, the German competitor.
Yep.
And we came for a holiday, sort of to just see our French friends, and so Nico and I started dating at that point, really. Yeah. But we knew each other from comps.
Yeah.
So then who made the first move?
Probably not you.
Yeah,
probably.
Nico was like, I don't think it was me.
That might have involved having to speak English at the time, which was a bit complicated.
So
I'm sure.
You couldn't speak French at the time, right? You couldn't speak French. Nico couldn't speak very much English. How was that language barrier to start with? Yeah. I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, I learned German in school, which hasn't been overly useful for my life in France. And Nico...
I always said that English was not useful.
Yeah.
Finally, it was a mistake.
And he married me.
That must have been tough. So, my wife is an athlete from Brazil, and when she had come to train in America, she didn't speak any English. But this was already 2013 or 14. So we had technology. So literally I would just write into the phone or the computer and it would translate, and then she would just write it back. But in 1998, none of that existed. So that must have been a lot more difficult to communicate. So you guys started dating then after you had already retired? You guys weren't dating during competition?
Not really, no. I think in 99 briefly.
Yeah.
In 99 briefly, and then in 2004 we sort of officially started dating, really, didn't we? And
gotcha.
Took him a while to ask me to marry him, though.
Yes.
How long?
Not and what year did we get married? See if you can remember.
12 years.
So was it 12 years?
We started 2004 and we've been married 2016.
You know, it took a while to convince him.
I was
2
not
children.
sure, 12 years to be sure.
Yeah.
To be sure.
12 years, 2 kids.
Well, I think if you ask all the male listeners, they won't blame you. I think if you listen to the female listeners, you might get a different opinion.
I know.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
But Kirsten was
So
like, come on, dude, it's time. And Nicolas, I'm not so sure yet.
That was it. I was saying that for a long time. Yeah, two kids, a house, and a cat later, and he finally popped the question.
Oh, good job,
So
Nico.
obviously,
Well, I think after all that, he was sure, which is good.
Yeah. Finally.
So, all right. So let's bring the conversation back to the sport. So, what was the highest point of your careers? And I guess, as far as results based and emotional wise, right? Because a lot of the past guests, their highlights were an age group medal, you know, when they thought they weren't going to do well, or, you know, so I guess it could be one or two answers as far as results or emotional.
you go first.
My best result was 2001, finished second in World Championships, individual, and emotional was quite the same competition, the best, because we missed the final team the day before, like make me really disappointed for that, and he helped me the day after to do my best for the country and everything. So in France, we used to do more for the team, and so the day before was really hard for me because it was the first time the final was 3-4-3, 3 in the final, three scores, and you didn't have the choice to
Yeah, you didn't have the choice to drop the lowest score. It was the first time that all 3 scores counted.
Yeah.
The 3 athletes that competed in the final, all 3 scores counted.
Quite strange for us, and we missed this. So I think 2001, and after I won 2 World Cup final, my best result was between 2001 and 2003. So, and after that, I just had an injury, and try to restart after. After.
And I remember when you were at your best, Nico. You're fabulous. That's all I can say. Fabulous.
Thank you very much.
And
what about you, Kirsten?
I guess the first one actually wasn't my best result, but it was certainly an unexpected one. European Championships, like when I was really young in 1997. So I was 16, and it was my first senior Europeans, I think, and I didn't have any expectations, and I ended up coming third, and in the individual, and that was sort of before the Chinese were really strong in the sport. That was before even, I don't know, the Canadians were there, but the Americans weren't necessarily highly placed at that point either. So the European Championships was almost like the World Championships at that point. We had most of the best nations that were competing, and I certainly didn't expect to get third, and so that was really, really unexpected and quite cool. So that was the first one. And then the second one, I think it was when I qualified for the Olympics, when I qualified the country in the World Championships in 2003 in Germany. That was really, it was one of my best competitions ever. I think I had exactly what I needed to get into that final and win the place for Great Britain for the Olympics in Athens. And I just felt on top of my game, really, I think, at that competition. So emotionally,
that's
I think
awesome.
that was,
And what were the procedures for Britain at the time? Was it nominative if you got the spot, or did you have to go through a trial system?
We did have a trial system, system. So there was the qualification of the country, and then that person had an advantage in the following trial system because it was esteemed at that time that if someone qualifies the country and they make the top 10, which was the criteria, they make the top 10 or top 8 at the World Championships. Top 8, sorry. Top 8 at the World Championships. It was esteemed that they should have a slight advantage going into the trial process. So I ended up winning the place for the country and winning the place individually for myself.
So Kirsten, if I remember correctly, that process was a little bit controversial. If I remember at the time, you and Claire and there was. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how complicated things were from your side?
Yeah, no problem. It was complicated because there was obviously my synchro partner and my training partner and the other female British trampolinist who was highly ranked at the time, Claire Wright, and she actually ended up in the qualification at the World Championships coming 9th, so just one place missing out on the final. And had she got into that final, we would have actually qualified 2 places for Britain, and so potentially had a spot each, which actually would have made it a lot easier on a personal level. It was difficult. I think it was very difficult for her. It was very difficult for me. We'd grown up doing everything together, competitions together, and to actually suddenly have only one of us go, that was really quite, well, it was difficult. I'm not gonna lie, it was difficult.
Yeah, I remember hearing, and it's not just Great Britain. I think all internal procedures are difficult. All domestic procedures are difficult because these are the people that we grow up with. These are the people that we compete domestically, and then we have to fight with them for a spot, right? It's always complicated. But I remember at the time, you and Claire, that really was complicated because you guys were so close. So you were so close, and then you had to fight it out, basically for that spot.
We trained together since we were sort of 5 years old. We'd had success in synchro, big success as synchro partners, as team members, same club, same coach, and there was that one spot. And as much as, I mean, I can't speak for her, I assume it was disappointing, obviously. I mean, who wouldn't be disappointed with the level she was at and her capabilities? But also personally for me, I suddenly found myself alone, and I didn't have enough confidence in myself, I think, to straight away say, yes, I'm the one, you know. Obviously for me too, it was difficult to accept that she wasn't coming with me and we weren't going together. That would have been the ideal, but it wasn't to be, and I was on my own for the first time. And that was quite daunting, really. So
just to pick up on that, because you guys grew up on the same club, right? So who was your mom, the coach for both of you?
Yes. Yeah. She coached both of us.
So it's
that must have
also
been
very
really
hard
tough on her.
On her, right? Because you have, in one side you have your own daughter, right? And the other side you have also a great athlete that you helped develop, and now there is only one spot, and of course she's still your mom, right? Of course you want the best for the daughter, but also the best for the athlete that she developed. So I can only imagine the position that your mom was in as well.
What was it like training together before leading up to those trials, right? That must have been the most tension, right, during training, because you see the other person, oh my God, they're getting better than me, or oh my God, they're performing so well in training. Uh-oh, this person, you know, is going to win, or that person's going to win. Did any of that go on during training?
I think we knew each other so well that we knew how each other was going to react before the trials. So after the World Championships and before the trials, we kind of knew how we were going to be in training. I think the hardest was after the trials, when I'd won the place. that was the hardest time actually, leading up to the games. I mean, I can't speak for Claire and what was going on in her head, but for me to come into training and leading up to the games, feeling like, I don't know, it's really difficult to explain, but I really did feel alone, and I'd never felt that before. And there was, as both of you know, the Olympics, it's a pressure that you can't explain. And it's mostly a pressure that you put on yourself, because it is the competition now, you know. And so with that pressure, probably a lack of confidence as well in myself, and my closest rival slash substitute, because she was the substitute, you know, if I didn't go, coming into training, it wasn't an easy situation, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for her too. And she actually ended up leaving the club. Sorry, she actually ended up leaving the club just after the games, I think. Yeah, she went to another club just after the games. So
let's move on out of that. And how was your Olympic Games experience?
Mixed, really mixed. One of the highlights, again, you guys probably know, sort of waiting to go in for the opening ceremony. That's just awesome. There's nothing like it. You're waiting in the wind.
Like that.
It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. That was probably emotionally the highest point of my whole career, actually. But then there was the competition itself, which devastated me. And it's something that I don't think all my other bad competitions or competitions where I didn't do what I wanted to do, you kind of forget with time. You know, you get past them, you move on, you take the positive, and you can make things better. But that one I don't think I ever will, you know. So it's a real mixed bag, because I was so happy to be there, and I'd worked so hard, and I knew what I was capable of, and I just didn't do it when I needed to. And that's a tough thing to move on from, really.
Absolutely. It's you know, and it's like you said, it's one thing if it's world championships where you have other ones, you know, but when the competition's only every 4 years and only maybe one person gets to go, you know, it's tougher. But I think, you know, and I think you probably do this naturally, is you take away the positives, right? You take away as many positive experiences and things that you can, you know, learn from it. And you try to make those memories, you know, larger and stronger than the negative ones. And I think that's just probably something a lot of athletes do naturally. Do you feel like you've done that, or no? You still have a bad taste from thinking about Olympics?
It's still there. I think it's going to nag me for the rest of my life, to be honest. But that doesn't stop me feeling and remembering the positives. Like I said, it was such an amazing experience, and there were so many positives to take away. It's just, I could just kick myself, and I can still kick myself today. But, you know, that's life. And I think it does make you stronger in the end.
Yeah,
I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So did you guys, I guess, leading up to the Olympic Games or during your career, for either one of you guys, did you guys ever face any hardships, injuries or mental blocks or skill confusion, anything like that throughout your career?
I was lucky for that. Just one injury for my knee injury, but it was a time where I took the positive of this one, because I won. It was my head wanted to stop, but I was
it wasn't possible to
it was
have
not
a break.
possible. I couldn't have a break. Competition, and I was quite tired at this time. I think my body said stop. So I broke my cross and have the 1 year rest and try to come back stronger after that. So I needed this break. So, but just one injury, and was lucky.
When was that in your career?
2004.
So
start end of I did in the display in Belgium. It was end of 2003. and just landing on my feet, put my legs back to stand up, and my knee left leave. Yeah.
Your knee went.
Yeah, my knee went.
Yeah.
And it was not like.
Did you have a surgery on it?
Yeah, 2 months later, surgery, and I came back a year after that.
Oh,
So
wow.
Nico, how many world championships did you do, and how many European championships did you do?
I have no idea. I did all worlds. I started in 98, so 98, 99. After it was 2001, 2003, 2005, 2000. I stopped in 2000, so 6 world championships. I did
World championships.
2 world games and European. I just missed European when I was injured in 2004.
But you did them all.
So I did all the other one between 98 to 2006. Yeah.
And 98, how old were you in 98? Did you do European youth in 98? Because 98 was the year that we had senior European and youth European to change them.
Senior European was our first international competition. After that was Sydney, 2 months later. And after that, youth European.
In Portugal, I think, wasn't it?
Portugal.
And I won the European. I won the youth European in Portugal.
That was an interesting year. That was an interesting year because the people that went to the senior European could still go to the youth European. That was really, really interesting.
The last time I think it was possible.
I think, yes, last time it was possible. Yes. After that, it changed. So, Kirsten, how many world championships did you do?
I don't know. I started in, when did I start? Canada.
96.
96.
96. Good memory, Stephen. Were you born?
So
that's amazing. Long time ago. Yeah, so 96 and then 98 and then 99, 2001. I finished in 2003, the last World Championships before the Games in 2004.
So that was five. So that was five World.
Yeah.
And Europeans, how many were Europeans? Europeans, you started earlier.
97, yeah, so probably one more Europeans. And I did my first world age group. It's called something else now, isn't it? CMGA?
No, it's still world age group.
World age group competition. In France and Portugal, they changed it differently because of the translation, yes.
Yeah. I did that in 1990 when I was 9, so that was quite young. That was my first international experience. Yeah.
How many did you do? Both of you, world age group? Did you do?
96. Just when
I
started in 96. I did my first world age group at this time.
Just like me. Like me.
Yeah. And after that, I came to Rennes and I started senior the year after. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
I did Germany in 1990 and 92 because it was in New Zealand and it cost a lot of money for us to go and I couldn't afford to go. And then 94 Portugal, Nuno. I think it was in Portugal.
Yes, 94 Portugal.
Nuno. And then and then 96.
Kirsten, you did a lot of them. 96, you did worlds already, right? So you did three world age groups?
Yeah, we went straight from the senior worlds to junior worlds. That was an experience, but we went straight from the hotel and like really nice hotel in the seniors to a sort of disused school and all the joys of world age groups. It was a bit different.
It's part of the life experience that we need to. It's part of the life experience.
So did you have any injuries or hardships, or mental blocks, skill confusions, Kirsten, in your career?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. Not so much injuries. I was quite lucky physically, but I had a lot of fear. I was scared probably on and off from about 1996 onwards. So with some loss of skills, I kind of don't like using loss of skills because I didn't really lose them. I just thought I did. Really.
Right.
But yeah, mental blocks. It was all, I think it was all down to confidence and pressure. And I learnt to get to know myself actually and how to work through it. But I had a lot of highs and lows. And I was a very hard worker. So when I was able to mentally work hard, I did a lot of work. And then there were periods where it was more difficult for me mentally and I was actually really scared. So I obviously got a lot of less training done during those times, but yeah, it wasn't easy sometimes.
Was there a specific skill or set of skills that scared you the most?
I was petrified of not twisting. Backward skills were fine. Half outs, Rudy outs. I was petrified of doing 2 and 3 instead of a half out or.
And that's a very common one.
Common. Yeah,
that's a very common one.
Even today, yeah, there's a lot of athletes that are still doing 2 and 3, 3 and 3, instead of Rudy outs that are just like they said, you miss your exit and that's it. You're flipping. So I think you're not a lot.
It takes one mistake or one moment of doubt for it, then it can creep in so easily, and
it's like a cancer.
Exactly, and it wasn't there constantly because I did have some really good long runs of training where I was on form and I wasn't scared, but then sometimes it got really quite debilitating. Sorry. Yeah, it was tough sometimes.
I tell my athletes it's a little bit like a virus, you know. It's just that whenever we let the seed of doubt plant, then from that point on it only grows, and it's really hard to control them after that. Really hard to control. It's obviously possible. What you just described, I went through the same thing, doing 1 and 3s when you do the Rudy outs, and then problems with half trips, doing 3 and 3 instead of half trips, and I know exactly how it feels. I know exactly how it feels.
And like I said, I think I got to know myself and how to work through it. And my mum, as my coach, she was really, really good with that sort of problem. And it's funny because I've started coaching in France, and I've just been through it with one of my athletes in France. So I knew how to help her with it, and that was quite satisfying actually, because like I said, I mean, from 1996 to 2004, I had times where I literally couldn't jump out the trampoline. I couldn't leave the trampoline because I was petrified. Luckily, it wasn't like that all the time. But and another good thing was that in competitions, I was fortunate that I was able to put all my fears aside, and I could go into a competition and do anything that I was supposed to do without that worry, and I don't know how I managed to put my fear aside, but it always worked for me in competition. So
when you have to, you have to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I managed to do it, and yeah, and the competition at the Olympics wasn't because I was scared at that point. That was just a mistake. But yeah, in other competitions, I'd not trained leading up to certain competitions, and I still managed to go and do the competition because I don't know how, but I managed to put that fear aside and get on with it, I guess.
So I would say it's a majority of athletes that have these issues of confidence and fear. What's something that you think that worked in training for you, that you know, a little piece of advice that you can give to these athletes nowadays that are going through something similar?
I think that there's a feeling almost of being ashamed when it goes, because everything's linked. So if you start to have fear on one move, quite often then that fear will take over on another move, which is linked. So for example, a half out, and then you'll feel fear on Rudy out, for example. And I felt almost ashamed, like, come on, I can do these moves. Why am I suddenly blocking on them? And I think you just need to take it easy on yourself and take it right back to basics. Be kind to yourself and take the time to re-establish the basics, build up your confidence, and only go at the pace that you need to go at to make yourself feel better. Quite often, like, I would say, oh no, I need to go, I need to do this move, I need to, because I've got a competition next week, or and actually forcing yourself faster than you should go doesn't actually help. You need to take your time and be kind to yourself, because the motivation's there. It's not a lack of motivation.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Coaches need to understand that too, because I think coaches that haven't experienced it or haven't had athletes that have experienced it sometimes can't understand and can push an athlete when actually they need to rein it back in, take it back to basics, and take the time to build their confidence back up.
I actually just did a little documentary recently, and we talked about this, and that's exactly what I said. It's tough on the coach. You know, the coach sometimes don't understand what's happening. We cannot read their minds, right? But those that have gone through the experience are a little bit ahead on the process than those that never they have the experience. And that's exactly what I said. And my tactic sometimes, or most of the times, is try not to give much importance in the beginning, so the seed doesn't really take on there. But then whenever it gets to a point that you see, okay, it already, the fear already took over, then not push. You have to go back to the basics. You have to see if you can eliminate that by going back. And it really depends on the personality of the athlete, in my opinion. You know, there are some athletes that will simply shut down. They will not want to do anything, but there are others that are willing to go through slow and build up again to what there was before. But I do agree that the coach has a fundamental role there, because the coach is going to determine exactly how fast they go there. And if they go too fast, I think it's a mistake. So the experience of going through it changes everything, I think.
I think what was important as well was to lower my expectations, because I would come in, when I was in these periods of time where it was difficult, I would come into training and expect to get through my voluntary routine, expect to get through my my set routine, and then I would almost be disappointed. And actually I learned that I should come into training with no expectation, and therefore everything was a victory, and treat it as such. Oh good, I managed to get through my routine, but I didn't go in expecting it, because that put too much pressure on me at those points in time.
Perfectly said.
Lower your expectations, and because intrinsically the athletes are motivated. They know that they've got competitions. They know what they need to do, if at this level anyway. So I think coaches need to trust that the athlete will get there, but in their own time. And you're pretty lucky. You never really had any doubts.
Nico never had any troubles, right? So he's pretty lucky. He's probably one of the few that I know.
Well, he only had to do back seals, so he has 50% of our problem.
True. And he says, like, yeah, it happened to me once. It happened to him maybe once in one training session.
No, but all the end of my career, I thought about this, but I had like one small stuff to think about, and it never happened again. So
he's crazily mentally sure of himself, which I think I admire.
I always done what I was sure to do it. Like I knew my body could do it. Like I never did Miller in competition because I didn't like it, and I could do it in trampoline or stuff. On tumbling, I didn't like to do it. I was no secret skill. Like I don't know if you
didn't feel safe.
Yeah, doing it. So you
didn't.
I prefer to try to find a way different.
So I would like to know something, Nico. I would like to know something, Nico. How much trampoline did you do to help with your tumbling?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every training.
Every day.
Every training we used to do tumbling, trampoline conditioning, and we we used to do like on the pit or trampoline land on the mat and different.
And I think we can see that. Of course, we don't know because we're not there to watch. But from the way the French tumblers do their skills, we can see that their trampoline skills, and your aerial awareness of the skills, it's different than what normal tumblers had, especially at that time. I think now it changed a little bit. But when you did your skills, especially full tuck, I remember so well. Full tuck was a full tuck, a trampoline full tuck. And you could do that full tuck anywhere. It feels like any if you're in a problem, full tuck, boom, easy for you. It was like easy because and I can see how much trampoline time you had on that. I was just curious. I if I had to guess, I would not have said every day, but now that you said it, I can definitely see it.
Yeah.
They're lucky in Rennes in particular, where we live. They have a really nice facility. It was the National Centre for Tumbling, and now it's the National Centre for Junior Trampolining. And so they've got pitted trampolines, normal competition trampolines, fast track to tumble tracks. It's an amazing gym. It's really good, and so you benefited from.
We didn't have fast track at this time. But now
they do.
So do you guys want to tell us a little bit of what you're doing right now? And why don't we start with Kirsten, since we're talking about Rennes, and I know that you have been helping the French. And now that you're a French citizen, I guess it's okay. But that was kind of a little bit of I don't know. Yeah, French kind of took advantage of that knowledge. Yeah.
No. I've been here for long enough. I've been here for long enough to justify the moving over to the dark side.
That is true. That is true. I will agree with that. So tell us a little bit about your situation now.
Okay, so I coached in a club when I first came to France, but it was sort of as a volunteer. That's the system here in France. You can coach as a volunteer. And then I started my own business, which meant that I had to stop, and had the kids as well. I've got 2 kids, so I had to stop coaching as a volunteer because it took up too much time with young kids and the business that I was running. I decided to sell my business last year, and a contract came up to stand in for Julie Periton, who has just had a baby. She was leaving on maternity leave, and she's the one who runs the junior program in Rennes for the Trampolinist. So they were looking for someone who was a trampoline specialist living in Rennes, available. And I guess I fit the bill for the for the time that she was on maternity leave, and that was really exciting for me because I've always felt like I've wanted to, with the knowledge I've got, I've wanted to give back, but it's difficult in the system in France because the qualifications are different, and to make a career out of it is very difficult at a club level, but to penetrate to a national level, that's very difficult as well because you have to go through the whole educational system here in France, basically. So I was lucky to get this position for 6 months, and hopefully it will continue in a different form in September. Hopefully my work here isn't done, but we're officially coming to the end of the contract. And it's really quite frustrating because half of the contract was spent in confinement. So doing Zoom meetings with the athletes at home. It's not quite the same.
It's not the same thing.
No. And I'd really enjoyed the beginning, and I was getting into it, getting to know the athletes, and we were doing some good work, looking forward to the European Championships coming up, the European Youth Championships, and all that obviously didn't happen with these exceptional circumstances. So I'm really hoping to come back and carry on working with them. We'll have to see what can be done about that.
That's exciting.
Well, yeah, I hope the French can take advantage of your knowledge, because it seems like you're motivated for it, and I think they will be lucky to have you. They will benefit from having you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And it would be good to see you at some of the competitions again, as a coach.
Well, I came to Tokyo.
Oh, how was that?
I came to Tokyo. Awesome. It was just before I started coaching again in January, and so obviously Tokyo was what, November? Yeah. November.
Yeah.
And I wanted to watch the World Championships, so I got to see 2 days of competition, the final days. Oh, it was so good to be back there, and brilliant. It was really, really good.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, I was going to ask you if you keep up, but you got to see the World Championships live. So what are your thoughts, both of you, on what the competition is like nowadays?
It's crazy.
Crazy good. It's brilliant.
I'm happy to not be at this age. Really, I prefer our age. Yeah. Especially, I know most tumbling, but tumbling is so crazy now.
But then you look back sort of 10 years before our careers, and the way it evolved is the same. You know, every era is different, and I guess what we were doing in 2004. 10, 20 years before that, they would have looked at us and gone, oh yeah, you know, I'm glad I'm not having to compete then. But with the equipment that's changed, obviously the introduction of time of flight in trampolining, time of flight, the horizontal
displacement.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Displacement.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm struggling with my French words in my head and my English words. So that has obviously changed the nature of the sport, and a lot more focus on difficulty. I enjoyed the set routines of our era, though. There was beauty in a set routine. That there still is in the best set routines, obviously, but now you've got to put the more difficult skills in there. I just think it's harder to go for perfection, like Manuel Duran did in Portugal when he got the famous 10s. I'm not sure that could ever happen
in Canada.
Sorry, not Canada. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So that's.
But on the positive, it's, you know, it's pushing people to do a wider variety of skills, so that's good. Much wider variety of skills, because obviously you can't repeat, and yeah, it's exciting.
The thing is crazy now is like there is more than 1 or 2 or 3 people can be in the podium, like 10 or 20 people can be in
potentially
first. Yeah, potentially. That's the things. Before it was like you knew it was between 2 or 3 or 4 people maximum could be first. Now it's like
I agree.
To be in final,
I agree.
to be in final, and when you are in final, 8 people can be first. It's crazy.
Yes.
I agree.
The depth has grown immensely.
Yeah.
The pool of athletes, yes, the pool of athletes that can all get there, it's phenomenal. In our time, it was just like Nico said. In our time, you knew that, you know, those 3 would definitely be there, plus a couple more, and you knew that like 5 people could probably get there. Now you have like 10, 15 that can all get there. It's crazy.
So when I finished second at World Championships in 2001, it was so close I could be first. It was just 7 points.
It wasn't that close.
The first one was, okay, you're first.
He was sure, you know, the other guy, if he didn't mess up, he was sure to win. Same Karaveva, you know, in my era, Karaveva, if she stayed on and did what she could do, there was a point when no one at that particular time. But now, yeah, there is more possibilities, I guess, and more countries that are getting much better at the sports. I don't know so much about tumbling, but in trampolining, obviously, the arrival of the Chinese in sort of when it became an Olympic sport, and subsequently there's, I mean, America, I think, dominate more now than they ever did when I was jumping.
Well,
when you were
back,
jumping,
we had our we had our heyday back in the 50s and 60s, and then we kind of had a little drop off.
Yeah, a little bit, but I agree with you, and I think the Chinese opened the door to all these new things, and everyone were like, "Whoa, let's go get them!"
Okay, yeah, definitely. It made everyone up again.
Yep,
this is a great leeway. So the rules are changing, right? So that there's no more set. It's going to be 2 voluntary routines. Only one of them counts. Okay, so you can repeat the same routine twice if you would like to, or if you hit it really good on the first try, you don't even have to go up and do a second routine. What are your thoughts on that? Do you like it? Do you dislike it?
I want my honest opinion.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I think it's a shame. I think I don't know. I say it's a shame, but then that means that there's less of that sort of sudden death aspect of trampolining where you do it or you don't, because with that you get an almost second chance, don't you? So I guess that's the positive. But the negative would be that you don't have to perform in every routine. You can maybe mess up once if you know that the other one's going to be taken into consideration. I don't know. It changes the whole nature of the sport and the mentality of the athletes, I guess, going in, because you know you can mess up one, and then the consistency. I always admired consistency in trampolining, being able to produce again and again, and I think with this, it's going to reduce that. You don't need to be as consistent if you've got the choice.
And I understand your concern, but don't you think it's a little bit unfair for artistic gymnastics? They can fall, get a penalty and keep going, or even rhythmic gymnastics, the ball falls off the floor and they grab the ball and continue. And we never had that little bit of leeway.
I agree.
But
then will they get a penalty if there won't be a penalty though? It's just choose one or the other.
So there won't be a penalty.
Right.
There won't be a penalty, but and this is still in discussion. I probably should not say this, but it's being considered to use both routines for the team score. So you would still have to have two routines for the team score, but the individual, the best one counts. So I think it's not all just a free for all. You can choose which one is best, but at the same time gives our athletes a little bit of an opening door to allow them for some mistakes, I guess, because it's still a mistake.
Yeah. So there's still incentives for consistency. And for tumbling, you only need 2 passes now, right, Nuno?
Yeah. So for and again, we don't win everything, right? I think most of the athletes and myself included, we think that is not enough. But again, the technical committee decided as a whole. Double mini and tumbling will basically only need 2 passes, and they can use those 2 passes along the competition. But for tumbling was a little bit
passes, prelims and finals.
Yeah, but for tumbling was a little bit like that as well, right? For tumbling, you only need 2, but for double mini, we used to need 4, and now they really only need 2. So
okay,
we shall see.
You're talking about the prelims in tumbling. There's 2 passes, but then obviously there's the final as well. Yeah.
Yes,
which you can do repeat the same passes.
Okay.
Yeah, and double mini the same.
When you say in gymnastics you have another change, but at this level, another chance. But at this level, when you fail, even if you can restart, you know it's finished.
You can't win, really. I mean,
except if you are the Japanese. When you are in trampoline, if you fail and you have another chance, but it's not the same that gymnastics.
Yeah, it's not really the equivalent of gym in this case.
It will be the same if you are fell off and you have to restart and finish your routine. Yeah. But
just if you and I can tell you that was discussed, but it's so complicated. Do you make them start out of bounces? Do you allow them to do a backward skill or a forward skill to connect that skill? Because there are many athletes that after they do the skills, they won't do it out of bounces. And we know this, right? There's a lot of
so that would be a good change a good wake up call for them to change the rules to this.
Right. So it became so complicated, but I'll be honest, just my personal opinion, I would be okay if you do fall the first one, you get a little penalty on the second one, just like artistics get, right? If they fall, they get I think half a point penalty or something like that. I'll be okay with that. But I think having them start from where they crashed, I think it just becomes so complicated.
Logistically, yeah, I think it would be difficult. But I think that two routines and you take the best one, why not? But it could be good to just take into account the other one too, not to the same extent, but like you said, have a little penalty if there's a problem in that routine, because the consistency, I don't know, I just think it's been the mark of our sport. the nature of our sport for
Absolutely.
forever. That you have to do it when it counts. So you don't get a second chance. And but then, hey, maybe this change will be really good, and we'll all be saying, "Oh, we should have done this years ago." You know.
So if you do your best in the first, you have to do the second one.
You could do what you want in the second one, I guess.
You can do what you want on the second one.
You just don't do it.
Do you have to do
you
it?
just
No,
I
you don't have to.
I don't think you have to do it. I think you and again
That one. Okay.
and again, all this is still being discussed. The first draft was presented, and every time we go to a meeting, there are still certain little details that we think that may be changed. Nothing is finalized yet, okay? But right now, the way it was presented to the coaches and to the federations, if you do the first one that you are really proud of, you do not have to do the second routine. You can just say to the judge, that was perfect. I can't do any better than that, and I'm good. But at the same time, you can also say, wow, I did 16.2 there. Let me do 17.1 on the next turn. I really want to try that 17.1, right? And that opens the door for that strategy. I think it's great.
Yeah, it can be good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, definitely.
All right, so it looks like we're pretty much almost out of time. So I have one last question for you guys. Okay,
The
this is for the
one,
both of
the
you.
hardest
The
one.
hardest question of all.
Okay.
Which is more difficult, tumbling or trampoline?
Trampolining, of course.
Different way.
I definitely say tumbling.
Yeah.
I think tumbling physically, maybe seeing
But
how
for me,
are.
trampoline was more difficult for me than tumbling. But
Yeah.
Fair enough.
You go.
I can't tumble, but either tumbling physically
It's
and
hard,
trampolining
like, tumbling,
scarily.
I think tumbling is more physical because, like you see, trampolining you can jump until 35, 30, maybe 40. Tumbling you don't have it. So physically, I think tumbling is harder.
Yeah.
But with the actual level in trampoline now, it's like but the boss is
and the
really
number of
crazy.
skills you have to be able to do in trampolining. When you compare the number of skills you have to be
It's
able to
difficult
do
to
in
compare.
tumbling. Yeah.
Physically, I think
Whips,
tumbling is
A
harder.
back handspring, right? A round off, a back handspring, a whip, and 2 doubles. Right? five skills. You need to know how to do 5 skills.
In the middle as well.
Right. Awesome. Well, listen, we appreciate you guys coming out here and keeping your kids busy for a little bit so you can come and talk to us and share your stories. We're very grateful. We wish you guys the best of luck. Kirsten, we hope that we get to see you maybe coaching on the floor at an international event sometime soon. Well, given the current circumstances, maybe next year, right? And we wish you guys the best of luck. And thank you again for coming on and having a good chat with us. We appreciate it.
That's good.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
See you in competition.
Yeah, he's the French physio, so he's at competitions.
I see you
Nuno.
continue in the
Oh,
competition.
nice. All right, so then we'll certainly see you. That concludes our conversation with Kirsten and Nico. We hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about them and the stories that they had to share. We love to hear your opinions and questions and maybe some stories that you have with these previous guests. Please reach out to us by commenting below or by email at trampolineinsight@gmail.com or on Twitter @trampinsight or on Instagram @trampolineinsight. You can also send us a voice message with questions or opinions by following the link in the episode description. We'll play it on the podcast and try to answer it live. Thanks for listening, and we can't wait to see you guys on the next episode.
See you all soon.